The US has threatened Iran. Iran has warned the US. The military is ready. So why hasn't the strike happened? Yet, because this war isn't meant to start. Traditional wars begin with declarations and invasions. This one began with positioning, pressure, and waiting. Old wars started with tanks crossing borders and formal announcements broadcast to the world. But this is different. This conflict didn't begin with a single dramatic event. It began quietly, with drones taking up silent vigil in the sky, with cyber operators preparing digital battlefields, and with sanctions slowly tightening like a vice. There was no declaration of war. There is no invasion timetable. There is only a state of constant heightened readiness without the final command to execute. This is the new face of power. Modern power doesn't announce its moves. It creates conditions. It shapes the environment, applying pressure in ways that are hard to see and even harder to counter. It doesn't rely on brute force alone, but on a strategic patience that can outlast an opponent's will to resist. In this new paradigm, the real battle is fought in the quiet moments between threats, in the economic data, and in the calculations of risk. Modern power doesn't rush. It waits. This isn't about destroying Iran. It's about preventing Iran from becoming untouchable. The objective is far more complex than simple conquest. Look at a map of the Middle East, trace the vital oil routes, and you'll see the chessboard. The US isn't aiming for regime change through a full-scale invasion. That lesson was learned long ago. Instead, the goal is to maintain a delicate regional balance of power. It's about reassuring allies in the region that American security guarantees are credible. It's about reinforcing deterrence, making it clear that certain actions will have consequences. But above all, it's about avoiding uncontrollable escalation. A direct war with Iran could spiral into a regional catastrophe, drawing in multiple countries and destabilizing the global economy. The goal isn't victory in the traditional sense. The goal is control without chaos. The United States doesn't need to win a war against Iran. It needs to avoid losing control of the region. And that requires a strategy of containment and pressure, not outright destruction. It's a game of managing influence, not conquering territory. Iran knows it can't defeat the US directly, so it changed the rules. The Iranian leadership understands the vast asymmetry in conventional military power. They cannot match the United States carrier for carrier, or jet for jet. So, they have developed a different kind of strength, one that doesn't rely on open battle. This is the art of asymmetric warfare. Instead of confronting American power head-on, Iran leverages its network of proxy forces across the region, creating instability and plausible deniability. This is also a form of psychological deterrence. By demonstrating its ability to disrupt shipping lanes, launch missile strikes, and activate its allies, Iran sends a clear message. The strategy isn't to win a fight, but to make the cost of starting one unacceptably high for the United States and its partners. Iran doesn't need to win. It only needs to make victory too expensive. This is a cost creation strategy designed to bleed an opponent through 1,000 small cuts rather than a single decisive blow. Iran doesn't threaten war. It threatens consequences. One strike doesn't end the problem. It multiplies it. Imagine the immediate aftermath of a US strike. The first effect would be an oil shock. The Strait of Hormuz, through which a significant portion of the world's oil passes, could become a conflict zone overnight. Oil tankers would be at risk, insurance rates would skyrocket, and global energy prices would surge, sending ripples through every major economy. Stock markets would become volatile. Then comes the regional retaliation. Iran's proxies, positioned across the Middle East, would likely be activated, targeting US assets and allies. The conflict wouldn't be contained to one country. It would ignite a chain reaction, entangling nations from the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea. The first missile wouldn't end the war. It would activate the system. It would trigger a cascade of events that no single power could fully control, pulling everyone into a vortex of escalation. If the US strikes and fails to achieve a decisive, clean outcome, it loses credibility. If Iran backs down in the face of threats, it loses its primary source of power, deterrence. This is the standoff. Both sides are locked in a position where any move is a gamble. For the United States, its reputation as the world's preeminent power is on the line. Any military action must be seen as successful. For Iran, its entire security strategy rests on the perception that it is willing and able to inflict pain. Its domestic politics and regional influence depend on it. This is a crisis where perception matters more than reality. The appearance of strength is, in itself, a form of strength. And in this standoff, restraint looks like weakness. Neither side can afford to be seen as blinking first, because the cost of backing down is almost as high as the cost of moving forward. There is no safe move on this board. This conflict is designed to stay unresolved. The constant state of tension, the cycle of threats and counter-threats, is not a bug, it's a feature. This is slow warfare. Sanctions act as a form of economic attrition, gradually strangling Iran's economy without firing a shot. Military drills and deployments serve as constant reminders of capability, a form of communication through force posture. It's a waiting game, where each side hopes the other will collapse under the sustained pressure. Over time, this tension becomes normalized. The world gets used to the headlines. The markets adjust to the risk. The longer nothing happens, the more normal it feels. And that normalization is part of the strategy itself, a way to conduct a long-term struggle below the threshold of open war. The objective is to exhaust the enemy, not to defeat them in a single battle. Wars like this don't start with decisions. They start with mistakes. In a high-stakes environment where both sides are on a hair trigger, the greatest danger is not a calculated plan for war, but an unforeseen accident. A miscalculation by a commander on the ground. A proxy group that goes too far, triggering a response its patrons didn't intend. An accidental strike on the wrong target due to faulty intelligence. A radar screen that shows a threat that isn't there. These are the sparks that can ignite the entire system. Escalation is a chain reaction, and once it begins, it develops a momentum of its own, pulling leaders into a conflict they never wanted. No one plans the first mistake, but in a standoff this tense, a mistake becomes statistically more likely with each passing day. The most dangerous phase of any conflict is the waiting. When soldiers are on high alert for extended periods, fatigue sets in. When threats become routine, desensitization occurs. The threshold for action can become lower. Overconfidence can build, leading one side to believe it can control a limited engagement, underestimating the enemy's response. This is the paradox of deterrence. The longer it holds, the more the conditions that could cause it to fail begin to accumulate. When tension becomes routine, mistakes become likely. The quiet before the storm is often where the greatest danger lies. The US hasn't struck Iran yet, not because it can't, but because once it does, there's no pause button. And everyone knows it. The fleets remain on station. The missiles remain on standby. The world holds its breath, caught in a strategic pause that feels both permanent and fragile. The wait continues.